ago, I released Road to the Multiverse on the channel, which was my 4-year anniversary special, and also a one-off return / finale to my ongoing Clacka The Geek sketch universe. Now, obviously, Road to the Multiverse came out at a time when I hadn't been doing these sketches, this sketch series, for nearly a year, so my audience has grown since then, and there's new subscribers coming in, so you might not all be familiar with what this was. So, quick, before we get into this video, let me just run down what I'm on about. So, from 2020 to 2021, and obviously with Road to the Multiverse being like a one-off special thing, I did an ongoing series of comedy sketches that I called the Clacka The Geek Sketch Universe. If you want to watch all of them, I'll put the playlist with every single one that you can watch. There was about 21 sketches that I did in total. 21? And these sketches, they were very loose in terms of their like structure and continuity, but it was essentially, it starred a fictional version of myself, you know, a bit more dramatic version of myself, as well as my own original sketch characters, so like Grandpa Puddings, Brian, Inspector Moose and whatnot, and also Clacka the Creep, who was my evil twin brother, and he was like he's the big bad of them all. And you also had some like established franchise characters that I did like impersonations of, and you know, they were characters in them, so like Tom Baker, Peter Capaldi, Matt Smith, mainly from Doctor Who, and then there's like other ones from Red Dwarf and whatnot. And it was very much just the wacky hijinks and bonkers adventures that these characters would go on in. But it was very loose in structure, but it was a, you know, this continuity, this all happened in this continuity with these characters, and with Road to Multiverse, that was the finale to that series. So I thought, because I've done every sketch in this universe that I ever will now, why not rank them? You know, like you rank, you know, Doctor Who episodes or Doctor Who series or whatever. You know, when I do rankings and whatnot, why not rank my sketches? It might seem a bit vain to do, but I think it's good to do this because it kind of, it's a good way to evaluate my past work and to you know, judge it all and see, obviously, what I'm, you know, going to be eternally embarrassed about, but also what still holds up, and you know, look at what I've done well, what I've failed miserably at, and just, you know, I think we go like retrospective on this whole thing. So yeah, so let's get basking into memory lane and ranking all my sketches. We got the little notepad with all my notes, starting with number 19 at the bottom. Oh, this is a bad one. Okay, let's just get this piece of crap out of the way. Number 19 is the 50 subscriber special, the second sketch I ever made. This one, I despise this one. I hate this one. And there is, every other sketch, like even the bad ones, there's at least something notable. Or there's a little funny joke there, or it was introduced a character, or something. This has nothing. This is just a piece. I need to refrain myself from not using really bad swear words, but I despise this one. It's worse than like Hellbent or something. I despise. It's garbage. It is garbage. It doesn't even feel like a proper sketch as well. Like part of these ones, it just feels. It's basically the whole thing of what I hit 50 subscribers a month before I did this. Yeah, great timing on my part there. But yeah, I did this like 50 sub special where it's like, you make it a Clacka The Geek and Clacka The Creep like hosting it. It's like a Blue Peter gone wrong kind of thing. But it's like, it's weird because you're making a Clacka The Geek out of like coloured card and tissue and foam, and you rub a tea bag over it. It's not even, it's weird. It's not even funny weird. It's all abstract, it's all creative. It's just weird. Like, what is this? It just doesn't, it's just weird. And I hate it. Aside from just how weird this sketch is, I mean, calling it a sketch is a bit of an overstatement there. But I mean, the production value is appalling. It's so janky. My acting, I mean, I'm no Christian Bale or Joaquin Phoenix, I'm not going to pretend I am, but even then I could have done better than this. Like, Clacka the Creep was trash in this one. In fact, in some of the early sketches he was, but Jesus Christ, this is awful. I hate this one. Like, there is not one redeeming factor about this. It goes on for too long than it should do. It's like 5 minutes long. It doesn't even be 5 minutes long. It should have been like a 2-3 minute one at most. Like, oh, I hate this one. If there's anyone, just do not watch this one, because it is just, it's no, oh man, if you want to watch it, then just get some booze or something, because it's just appalling. Okay, next one up, Capaldi CONUNDRUM. This one is also crap, but at least this one has like 2 redeeming factors. That's more than the 50 subscriber one can ever dream of. So, okay, 2 things that make this one notable. One, it's the first time I ever used a green screen for a video, and that green screen has done me wonders, so there is that. And secondly, it introduced 2 key characters. First of all, Matt Smith, but predominantly Peter Capaldi, who has become one of my favourite characters to portray. I love doing the voice. I'm Peter Capaldi, and I play Doctor Who. I love doing that. I think he's one of the favourites. He's one of the mainstays of this series, so it introduced him, so he's notable for that. But the rest of this sketch, oh boy. I should probably clarify before going into why I hate this sketch, is that I'm with this sketch, I was very much inspired by some of my favourite YouTubers who do like sketch content, and in particular Jack Reeves, who used to go as the Doctor Who guy, but he did a series of Doctor Who sketches called Doctor Who Road, and they're really good, and I would take inspirations from them, and sometimes, there's ideas that I've taken for some sketches, like Many Deaths of Rory. That was an idea that he had, but I tried to build on that and put a new spin on it. This sketch, right, I took one of his sketches, and this was just complete plagiarism, other than swapping, like, a character for Rimmer and Lister in this instead. Like, the plot points and the beats this one hits are exactly the same as that one. It's just blatant plagiarism, and I hate it for that. And if Jack is watching, I apologise, mate. Yeah, he's literally just Capaldi does a monologue in front of a green screen with his title sequence in the background. He gets interrupted by a character, in my case, Rimmer and Lister, but like it completely hits the exact same notes, and it's just so obvious as well. Even the thumbnail is really similar to his, and it's just dreadful. I hate it for that. Even then, other than just introducing these characters, it's completely aimless. Number 17, Valentine's Day. Now, I should clarify that this was the very first sketch, so it does get a couple of points just for being the first one, and it does have some funny moments of trash again. But I should clarify that with these sketches, the first 3, they weren't immediately part of this universe. It was only with a Study in Shells, the 4th sketch, that I made it retroactively part of this universe. So technically it didn't start them off, but it is still the first one, so it does get points for that. But, it's not the best way to start off. It's really cringy, like, really poor acting from my part. It's a really aimless one. Nothing really happens. Again, plagiarism abound here. And it's aged horrifically. Like, I mentioned Brexit and Jeremy Corbyn. Who remembers Jeremy Corbyn now? Like, what the hell? But yeah, it's not even that interesting as it's a bad one. It's really nothing special, but it's just a really unremarkable one, and there's nothing really that I can say about it. It's just a really weak start to the sketches. Okay, so out of the ones that I flat out hate now, at number 16, I've got a Test of Worth, which was the 8th sketch that I did. It was kind of a parody on that scene from Avengers Age of Ultron where the Avengers try to lift Thor's hammer and see who's worthy and whatnot. And it's kind of playing on that, but again, a lot of the jokes in this one were stolen from the sketch that Jack did. So again, plagiarism, that's why it's knocked down on this list. But it's not as bad as the other 3 that I just mentioned, because there are some good things about it. I think, one, it looks very nice. I think there's some cool visuals here and there. There's some good effects of like the explosions and the lightning. There's cool effects in that regard. There's a few funny moments, particularly Tom Baker. I think he does have some good one-liners in here. But overall, it's not one that I'm massively fussed on. And it also has a really weird pacing problem. It doesn't feel it's not that short, so it's not like a mini sketch. It's not like a little one, but it's also not as long as some of the bigger ones, so it's really awkwardly stuck in the middle in terms of its pacing. So I don't know, it's really awkward in that way. Yeah, as I say, it's not as bad as those other 3, but it's still not very good, and I'm not really fond of it. Although, with Road to the Multiverse, obviously in this one, at the end, I pick up the hammer or try to, and it moves like Captain America did in Age of Ultron. It's like, oh, is he worthy? And then in Endgame, obviously, he gets paid off, like in Road to the Multiverse, he's worthy. So it's retroactively made a little bit better, this sketch has, thanks to Road to the Multiverse, but it's still not very good. At 15, a maybe very surprising one, No Time to Spy, which until Road to the Multiverse was the latest sketch that I did. So I released this in September last year, so it's very recent in comparison. So you might be thinking, well, why is one of your recent sketches? Why is it near the bottom? Well, this one. This one is very much like a setting up sketch. It was clearly setting up something with Terry and his spies, and there's going to be a big battle and whatnot. And obviously, because I canned the sketches at this point after this because they were stressing me out, and I don't regret that. My mental health I will always put above making YouTube videos. I will always put that above that, but it just means that this sketch just doesn't mean anything, because it was never paid off, so you can't, it just doesn't stand up well on its own 2 feet. And it's a shame, because on a technical level, this one is quite good. You know, you've got better picture quality with, I got a new phone at this point, so you know, the picture quality is definitely better. The camera angle's better, the editing's better. It got a location nice with the beach, that was really cool. The sea, you've got Charlie in this one, my friend Charlie, get involved and playing the villain. That was cool. Although, unfortunately, I look back at that beach action sequence and I genuinely think I could have done better even then. And, you know, this one's just going to show that you can have all the nice equipment. If you don't have a good story, and if it's not doing anything really, then it's just not going to be worthwhile, it's not going to be remembered. And also, because this was the last sketch for a while, before obviously, you know, it started to stress me out, it always left a bad taste in my mouth, unfortunately. So that's why it's near the bottom of the list. I don't really look back too fondly on this one. Okay, number 14 now, we have got The Geek Awakens, which is a very early sketch. It was the 3rd one, and admittedly this is probably weaker than No Time to Spy, but again, you know, it has the charm to it, it has passion behind it. I made this one surprisingly like 2 hours, like from thinking of the idea to uploading it to YouTube. I wanted to do something for May the 4th, you know, Star Wars Day, something Star Wars related. So I did a sketch with Clacka The Geek and Clacka The Creep, having a bit of a lightsaber duel, arguing over Attack of the Clones or something, and it's just a bit of fun, but I'm happy with how it turned out in like 2 hours. I think I'm proud of it. I mean, it's not perfect at all, you know, some of the effects and production is a bit, you know, janky. It's still in that 4:3 aspect ratio. The picture quality obviously isn't perfect. The explosion at the end is literally just a still image of an explosion, but I'm happy with it. You know, it's got better cinematography. I mean, it was the first video I ever used a tripod for, and I remember Ronnie was like, "Oh, you saw you your tripod, well done," because he taught me how to properly use it, and it does work. It gets better angles and whatnot, and it just works better. The dynamic is quite fun. The lightsabers, you know, the shots of them, they're pretty cool, I've got to say, and it is just that it's nothing, you know, massive, but it has charm, it had passion from me, and so it's one that, even though it is a bit cringy and a bit dated in terms of the production, it's one that I can still watch and, you know, be like, alright, it's not great, but it's you know, at least I gave a crap about it, you know. At number 13, it's in a very similar vein to Geek Awakens. We have The Return of Eccleston. I made this one on holiday, and it was done very quickly. It's a very short one as well, but it was basically, on the day that I made this, Christopher Eccleston announced that he was coming back for Big Finish, and instead of just making like a generic news video, like, oh my god, Chris Eccleston's coming for Big Finish, I made a sketch about it, and I did a parody of that ending scene from Back to the Future 2 when Marty gets the letter from Doc, and it's like, 1885, he's in the Old West, but he's alive, you know, that scene from Back to the Future 2. I love Back to the Future 2, it's amazing. I love the Back to the Future films anyway, but anyway, I did a parody of that. Obviously, like Chris Eccleston sending me the letter. It is quite funny, and you know, nice change of scenery with the location in holiday when I was in Wales. It's quite funny, just a nice like way of a different way of getting my thoughts across on this new news. Although I do have a bone to pick with this one. At the beginning with the data, the da 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 da, you know, Back to the Future reference there. I put the date like they do in the films, but I got the date wrong. I put the previous day's date, even though it was literally, I made it literally on the date. That's, how does one screw up like that? Either way, other than that, it is, again, it's, you know, like Geek Awakens, a bit low-key, bit tacky, bit, you know, janky in places, but it's still got that charm that it is enjoyable. In 12th place, we have The Many Deaths of Rory Williams, which, this one, again, is kind of an idea nicked from one of Jack's sketches, but all that was nicked from it was just Rory Williams kept dying in the show in Doctor Who, you know, the companion Rory. He kept dying in the show all the time, so you make a sketch about it. That was literally the stimulus I went in with this making, and I just wanted to focus on, you know, him dying, but in really ludicrous, stupid ways, and really exaggerate that idea. So, like, he bangs his head on the sink, or he gets accidentally shot, and it is really quite creative, and it's really quite funny, those bits, and it's more at the beginning of the first half, that stuff, but it is really funny. I really like that bit. It's class. Yeah, Ronnie was the one that shot me in that bit, but yeah, he was in this one. He had a little cameo in this one, but yeah, that's great. Ronnie in a sketch is always great. Then when they go to like Chris Chibnall's office in it, because it's like Rory and Matt Smith team up to figure out why Rory keeps dying, and in that bit it does kind of just go to a grinding halt, the pace of it. But then Freddy Krueger shows up because Chris Chibnall creates Freddy Krueger, and then he just kills Rory again. and then they have a big fight in the garden with like Tom Baker showing up for some reason, and like they get him, he goes into the vortex, and Rory's worthy of Mjolnir, so he's kind of like Vision in a way, almost, yeah. But it's a very good one, not perfect. I think, yeah, the middle really does bring it down a bit, but overall I think it's a solid one. At number 11, we have Inspector Moose. Oh man, it's a bit of like, this one is essentially, Inspector Moose is a parody of like Inspector Morse. He's an American detective, but he's a really naff one, and he has, well, he's not really a naff detective, but he has this really naff advert, like, this is me doing like an advert, but it's really like bad, it's meant to be really stupid. But yeah, this one is definitely good. It's quite funny. The Inspector Moose character, I've always wanted to try and include more original characters, and I quite like Inspector Moose, although I wish, if I hadn't have cancelled the sketches, I would have liked to have done more with him. I think, you know, there was more that I could have done with him, but overall, this is a pretty fun sketch. There's some really funny gags, like, the bit that always gets me is when he's like, have you ever had an accident at work that wasn't your fault? It's time to try human sacrifice. And he just shoots Rory for no reason. Like, what was that about? It's brilliant. There are some quite funny gags. I like the bit when he keeps failing at the beginning, like, to introduce it, and like, Alan Partridge shows up in it. And you know, the interview gags and some of the stuff that he can do, like, I can polish people's shoes with a banana peel and whatnot. And the bit at the end with the IT crowd reference with the number and I fall over, you know, that was quite funny. Although, I think my main fault with this one, and the reason it's not higher, because this one definitely would have been higher, if I'd have gone a bit further with it, like with a physical comedy, like really go for it, really do some really wacky, stupid, bonkers things, but I think I played it a bit too safe in parts, and I think I really could have, there's real potential with this one to go a lot further with the physical comedy, so that's why it's a bit lower down, but it's still a pretty fun one, a nice little one. Cracking the top 10, now this is a bit of a trilogy here, so I'm going to count all these 3 sketches as one. These were the 3-year anniversary trilogy. So for my 3-year anniversary last year, I did a little competition on the channel where you guys could write your own, I did it like a video where it's like, you can write your own sketches in, like write a sketch synopsis in no more than 100 words, and the best 3 I would make into little mini sketches. So the ones I made were Airplane Mode, Capaldi's Failed Robbery, and the RORY Roll, where I released them daily. And I went back and looked at some of those sketch ideas, and they were brilliant. Like, there was one of them that I think I would really like to make, that was brilliant. The Daleks play Cahoots, that was a genius idea. There were so many great ideas, and I loved all of them, I should say, but these 3 are the ones that caught my eye the most. So, Airplane Mode was a really simple premise, but really funny. It really caught me off guard with how like just simple but snappy it was. And it's probably the weakest of this lot in terms of my execution of it, but it was still a really great idea. Then you had Capaldi's Failed Robbery, which was, in my opinion, I think the one that turned out the best. It was essentially, Capaldi had got so much stuff like sunglasses and coats and whatnot that he'd run out of money, so him, Brian and Lister try to rob a bank, but then they get stopped by Terry, and then Alan Partridge shows up and he knocks him out with a hose pipe, and that was a great bit of physical comedy there. I think, you know, I like doing the bombastic kind of stuff like that, but I think it turned out the best, that one did. And then there was the RORY Roll, which, whilst not the best in terms of my execution, was, in my opinion, the best idea of all of them, because it was just, it caught me so off guard. It was about like Rory rolling Matt Smith, and then he gets sent to court for copyright, and it just caught me so off guard, and I absolutely loved that idea, and it was genius. And I with that one, I tried to have a bit of a message at the end of like copyright and how unfair it can be at times, and I think these 3 really do encompass like everything that I tried to do. With Airplane Mode had the comedy, you know, like Airplane Mode, it was I turn my phone on airplane mode because the trickster said so in my head, and it flies away. That's like the comedy. Then the Capaldi one had the kind of action spectacle, you know, the explosion and whatnot, and then the RORY Roll had a bit of the message, you know, the kind of heartfelt message at the end, and they really do encompass everything that I loved about these sketches, and it was a really fun one to do, and a real footnote in the channel. Next up we have How to Make Tea with Peter Capaldi. This is a 2020 sketch one, the last one's from 2020. And with this one, at this point, I'd been making a lot of sketches that were very high concept, you know, very much delved into like, you know, Doctor Who lore and whatnot, and like, you know, references. And this one I wanted to bring it kind of back to basics, have a very simple premise with just a couple of characters, a bit of a mini sketch, and just focus on the comedy, and I think it really does excel, this one. Again, it's not perfect, my acting is a bit wonky in places, and it's not amazing, but it is still quite funny. It's Peter Capaldi, and Grandpa Pudding. So I think we're a great pairing because they do play off each other quite well. And, you know, Peter Capaldi is obviously a bit an older guy, but because I play him, he seems younger, so you see the differences, and it's just great. It's quite a simple premise, but that's why I think it works. It doesn't overcomplicate things, but I can't put it much higher because, again, it is the simple one, but it does work. The dynamic is great. Some of the editing is actually quite cool, like the bit at the beginning with the very snappy, like, introduction. That's kind of cool. The "Don't Stop Me Now" sequence at the end is really funny, and my ending line that, well, that's a way to get out of English homework, or something like that. That was really good. It's a really kind of simple but effective one, but I can't put it much higher because it's just simple, and I like it. I'm happy with this one. At number 8, we have my 2020 Halloween special, The Trickster. Now, this one gets a lot right. There's just a few things, like a few structural plot things, that do hold it back. Because this was more of a plot-focused one, and not really a more comedic one. It's very kind of exploring new worlds and abstract ideas and whatnot, and there's so much great in here. So, first of all, I love how it looks. I love the visual style of the reds of the Trickster's universe. Speaking of the Trickster himself, he's a great villain, you know, with his thick Russian accent, or my attempt at anyway. It's great. I really liked him as a villain. There's some really cool, like, dream kind of stuff, some weird, abstract, cosmic, fantasy ideas, some good stuff there. I love the 4 characters that are in it. There's a good dynamic between them. And I also think it's some of my best acting in the entire sketch. You know, the bit when I've broken free from my, you know, nightmare thing, and I realise everybody else isn't awake and whatnot, and, you know, me actually crying. I wanted to really go for it, and it really does stand out all this time later. It is definitely a big sketch. It's an iconic one. It's quite a big, well-known one, and I think it's a very good one, but there's just a few problems I think that it does have. One, the pacing is a bit weird because it's quite a long one, quite a lengthy sketch, but there feels like there's a missing second act between when Grandpa Pudding's Matt Smith and Capaldi get put in their dream state and before I get put in mine. There feels like there's a scene, like a confrontational scene between the Clacka The Geek and the Trickster. There feels like there's a scene missing there. And also the ending resolution of there's a crack in time and whatnot, and they escape through that. That felt really rushed, a really rushed ending. But admittedly, when I was filming it, when I was nearly done, my tripod broke, so I need to wrap it up quickly as possible, so that's why it is quite rushed, but still, it does let the sketch down a bit. But overall, I think it's a very strong one with some of the best elements of the sketches, but not quite refined, I don't think. Okay, now I think we're getting to the really great ones I'm bloody proud of. So at number 7, we have Dale the Dwarf, which is a very short sketch. It's a Red Dwarf themed sketch with Rimmer, Lister, and also Holly, you know, Holly the computer. I loved getting Holly involved, but I've always wanted to do a proper Red Dwarf sketch, but I never wanted to play Cat and Crichton. Crichton because the costume would be really cumbersome, and Cat because I am not playing a black character full stop. That's just never happening. But yeah, this one acted as a kind of sequel to Extraordinary Life of Brian, and the Rimmer and Lister were in that. They were like fighting the Autons in that, and because Rimmer did such a bad job, he gets sacked from unit. I really enjoyed, like, you know, having a bit of a sequel, having a bit of connection to the Life of Brian sketch, and it made it feel very relevant, and this adds more to it, and it's a really fun dynamic, really short and sweet. It gets across what it needs to, and also people commented on that video saying that even though they hadn't seen Red Dwarf, they still enjoyed the sketch. I really enjoyed that. I'm glad that that was the case as well, because I think some of the ones can be a bit alienating with the Doctor Who references and whatnot, so I'm glad that people who hadn't watched Red Dwarf could still enjoy it. That's what it seemed, and that's great. But to the Red Dwarf fans, there are some references that you'll pick up on. If you've seen the show, you'll know certain references, like the Holly joke at the start and the woman's breast bit at the end. They are specific Red Dwarf references. If you've seen them, you'll know what they are. But I'm glad that this just works on a all-rounder. It's a short and sweet one. It doesn't alienate anyone, but fans of the show will know it. It works a good sequel sketch. It's an all-round great one, I think. I also like the lighting in it. I did have like a retro kind of vintage filter all over this sketch, but I think that does add to it. It makes it feel more distinct. I really like this one. Next up we have Get to the Chopper, or Get to the Chopper, as Arnie would say. This again is like Down the Dwarf in the fact that it's a sequel to Life of Brian sketch. And this time it focuses on Brian. He now works at UNIT, and it shows how it's affecting him as a character, and like explores him as a character and explores his friend, and how it's kind of, you know... I like the exploration with Brian's character in this one, and obviously you've got his mate Reese, played by Ronnie, who is just... Like, Ronnie is always great in these sketches. I think we just have we just get on so well, and our dynamic, it just works, because I always stick to the script, and he improvises all the time, and I think, no offence, Ronnie, but I think in the bench scene, I think you needed to rein it in a little bit. I think you need to just, like, stick to the script a little more, but other than that, I ain't complaining, because, you know, it's fab. It's just a great dynamic. To be honest, so most of the comedy and most of the laughs do come from Ronnie's delivery. Like, even when we were filming it, I kept cracking up. Just from, like, simple lines like, "You're right, mate, yeah." I don't know, just, like, sometimes the way he delivers certain lines, it just cracks me up, and I kept ghosting and whatnot. But the ending line, when I say, I'm going to cancel the helicopter, oh, man, I'm so proud that I improvised that. That was totally on the spot, because Ronnie made the tweeting joke, and I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of that. The ending gag with the helicopter blowing up is just really funny. A bit of world building with Tom Baker at the beginning in Unit and all that stuff, and it's nice scenery with the park, and you've got links to Ronnie's channel with some of his references, his videos as well. It's just an all-round great little sketch that is just brilliant. There's the bit with the with the deodorant bit, like, how much is it? 30 quid. 30 quid. You're taking the mick. Oh man, it's just a great one. It is just great, this one. At number 5, sorry, Studying Shelves, this one is a classic. It was the first time that I ever started treating the sketches seriously, like interconnecting them and having all the characters to come together in this big adventure. This one was just, I mean, it has not aged well, not particularly great. Like, obviously it's still 4:3 aspect ratio and some wonky effects here and there. But again, learning curve, you know, first time I used a proper explosion effect. It doesn't look great, but it's the learning curve, and it was me learning all this stuff, and it was great. And again, in terms of the storytelling, you know, it's a very vignette storytelling, you know, these different scenarios, you know, you're in the park, and then you're on Red Dwarf, then you're with Tom Baker, then you're in the garden with Terry, fighting him, and you've got Becky, my friend Becky there, and then Ronnie, and there was just so much variety in this sketch, and it was a real project. I took 2 weeks making this, and it was just, you know, a lot of work went into it, and I'm really proud of it still. Yeah, even though it hasn't aged amazingly, it's still got that charm, and that, like, not cringe charm, but like, it's just got that charm. It's like a bit low budget, a bit low key, but I mean, the final bit in the action sequence with the standoff, it's just really fun, and it's just really funny. I really enjoyed that one, and once upon a time this would have been at the top of the list, but now I think about it, it's definitely, you know, other ones have improved on it on the formula of the sketches. But yeah, great stuff here. Terry, you know, great villain. All the characters like Tom Baker and Clacka the Creep and Rimmer and Lister all coming together, and this was just the start of what would become. At number 4, we have my 2020 Christmas special, A Christmas Tale. Now, this one is actually I really like this one. This is a really sweet one, and it's a really quite cool, quirky one, like clever concept and whatnot, and it's a really wholesome, uplifting one that I think resonates. It definitely resonates with me, and I really like this one. It's quite sweet. The whole idea of this one is that it's got the different characters like Grandpa Puddings, Rimmer and Lister, the Doctors, me on Christmas Eve. It counts down to the days leading up to Christmas, and it like shows them in an advent calendar. It was actually inspired by an Inside Number 9 episode they did. It called Love's Great Adventure, which actually came out the same year in 2020 as this. But it was inspired by that. Obviously, I didn't do all 24 days like that episode did, but I did the few days leading to Christmas, and I really enjoyed it. There's some really fun vignettes, and I think that's where these sketches are the best. It's like these kind of Studying Shelves, Christmas Tale, and a few of the others ones. Like the vignette storytelling, where there's like little scenes put together with a through line, and it just works for sketch comedy. It just works. It really does. Grandpa Pudding's bit when he's ranting at Boris is just great. Rimmer and Lister, I think this is one of the better scenes with them and their dynamic. I think it just works really well. The Doctors hanging out is really funny. I think when Capaldi and Smith are arguing over the Christmas specials. And then at the end with me, Clacka The Geek, moping about, you know, being a bit sad and whatnot, and then Capaldi comes in and shows the good memories of 2020, and Santa's there, like a vision of Santa. And it's like, you know, focus on the positives, and it helps a great deal. And I wanted to get that message across, because 2020 was crappy as it was, but there was always good to come out of it. No matter who you were, there were always good things to come out of it. And, you know, Christmas is always a great time to reflect back on the year. And that's what I wanted to do this sketch, and I think that's why I hold it in such high regard compared to the rest of them. It's a really sweet one, and I really like it, and I just think it's just a really nice uplifting message at the end. I like this one. I'm really proud of it. At number 3, we have not only my favourite of the 2020 sketches, but also the funniest sketch that I've ever made. Clacka The Geek goes for a job interview, where Ronnie, again, he appears in this one as one of his characters from his channel called Gustav Matlock, who is like a really stupid politician kind of character, but he's an employee at Tesco Express. And man, this is hilarious, this one. Even from the very opening scene when they're looking for a job, it is great. And then it's also the first sketch that introduced Grandpa Puddings, who is probably my favourite character to play. I absolutely love playing that character, and this introduced him, and it's just like, it's a great introduction. But then you've got the main meat of the sketch, which is me and Ronnie back and forth, the interview questions, and man, obviously, as I said, I stick to the script usually, he improvises, and the dynamic just works perfectly. And the fact, I usually cringe at my own stuff, but the fact that I still howl with laughter at the phone call scene from me going, what are you asking me that for? Here's my references, use them, to going through the contacts list like Dave from the pub, what the hell? To the actual phone call with Tom Baker. And he's like, no way, kebab and sausage, curry and sauce. It has me howling, that scene does. When I was making this sketch, I genuinely didn't think much of it initially, because I just thought it'd be kind of like a little small scale one. It was more focused on the comedy, a bit like, How to Make Tea with Capaldi. But it was quite a long one, not nearly 10 minutes long. But, oh man, it is an iconic one. I mean, mainly down to Ronnie, so cheers, Ronnie. Can I have you in a sketch again, please? Oh, I need you. Also, for this one, we used Ronnie's proper HD Canon camera. So, photography-wise, it looks the best. It's proper HD and whatnot, so it looks the best. It's well edited. You've got a bit of Nick Kershaw music in there. Literally, there is nothing that you could knock at this sketch. It's just, I mean, you probably could, but I can't. I love this one. It holds up so well nearly 2 years later. Jesus Christ, 2 years ago. In second place, we have the first 2021 sketch, The Very Extraordinary Life of Brian. Now, this one, what I tried to do with this one is have it as like a series opener. So, like, the 2020 sketches were one series. This is the start of 2021. So, I wanted to be the start of, like, the second series of the sketches. And because, obviously, it was getting kind of convoluted with some of the plot-heavy ones, like Many Deaths of Rory, Trickster, I wanted to try and kind of have it, a good, like, bit of an epic, but also starting off with a bang, but have it so new viewers could ease their way into the sketches, and that was through the character of Brian, introducing a new original character. And I love the character of Brian. He's just really funny. He's like your proper chavvy, you know what I mean? He's great. And because of how ordinary Brian is as a person, as a character, I think that's why it works, because he can, ease his way into this universe. He's discovering it all, these new characters and whatnot, and his interactions with these different characters and whatnot, and the little vignettes. Again, it's that vignette storytelling as well, which I've kind of mastered with these sketches, but it makes it easy for a new viewer to go into them, and that's why I'd say start with this one if you want to get into the sketches. I'd say this is a good starting point, because it just eases you well into these characters and this universe. It's a well-made one, in my opinion. You've got some good stuff in the pub with me and Grandpa Puddings. That's a bit good one. It's kind of like a New Year'sy kind of one. Like, I think that bit is set in New Year's anyway. The Capaldi scene is quite funny. The Matt Smith one's pretty good. Probably the weakest, but still quite good. And then the Auton battle, the big battle with Rimmer, Lister and Unit. This first sketch Unit was in, and Tom Baker was there, and Rimmer and Lister, they're fighting the Autons. That's a great. I love doing the Autons. They were great. That was really fun. And the Nestine, the spaceship when they all go on. That was great. And with that bit when Clacka The Geek confronts Nestine, I tried to improve it from the Trickster, because I wanted to, as I said, I wanted a scene where the hero confronts the villain. That's what I did in this sketch. I improved on that, so, I'm learning from past mistakes. That's why I'm happy with that bit. Also really like the cliffhanger as well. I mean, it never really got paid off, because it was like setting up like they were going to go to Gallifrey, and it never happened, but it's a really cool cliffhanger. And Clacka the Creep shows up with a lightsaber. That was just cool. Fun fact about this one though, originally it wasn't going to be Brian, it was going to be Jim from Friday Night Dinner. If I did a video on Friday Night Dinner, and I did like a skit with Jim, the character that Mark Heap plays. And I didn't end up doing it for two reasons. One, I lost the glasses that I used for him. And two, I wanted more original characters. So that's why it wasn't Jim, but it was Brian. And I'm so glad for that decision. But the number one sketch is my most recent one, Roads to the Multiverse. I mean, for the longest time, it was the Life of Brian, but this one has just knocked it out of the park completely. I'm so proud of this one. And honestly, I can't tell you how much fun I had making it. And I can't tell you how much fun and how much I missed playing these characters, kind Clacka The Geek, Grandpa Puddings, Tom Baker, Clacka the Creep, Brian, Capaldi, all these characters, and it was just such a joy to bring them back for one last hurrah and really go out with a bang across the multiverse. It was a joy. Obviously in the prologue there's that little lightsaber duel with Clacka the Creep and Clacka the Geek. That was kind of like to fill in the gaps between, you know, how long it had been since the last sketch. That was kind of, you know, filling in the gap a bit. And then there was the bit in Liverpool, which admittedly is quite... I filmed that months before this sketch when I went to Liverpool in about April. And I wanted to keep it vague because I wanted to do something with that, but like keep it vague enough so I could do anything with it. So that's what I did. And then obviously the main sketch starts. Obviously there's the talky bit in Unit, and that was really fun to do. All of that was quite difficult, that talky bit. And then you've got the whole multiverse hopping with the different universes, and I loved coming up with all these ideas. Like, my favourite one is probably the 500 Miles universe. That one just cracks me up, that does. And I'm so proud of all the split screen that I did. In fact, I did a lot of split screen in this sketch. Yeah, the different universes, like the Fire universe, the Bubble universe, for a brief moment, the Plush universe, the stick drawing universe, the silent movie one. Roger Moore showed up in that one. The apocalyptic one with the green screen. I'm really proud of that green screen work there. That was... I might do it behind the scenes on how I did that, because I'm really happy with how that turned out. And then they go to the universe where Clacka the Creep survived, and he's the ruler of the universe, and he's got the Infinity Gauntlet and everything, and he's just a complete dictator, and I'm really happy with that. That scene was quite cool, like the bit when he's going like, you know, I can kill you forever and ever and ever. I'm really happy with that. And then from the execution scene to the end, it is just some of the best stuff I've done. You know, Terry turning good. I think it's justified that he turned good because Clacka the Creep treated him like crap. Terry, like, justice for Terry, man. Then you had the Mjolnir scene where I'm worthy, you know, making a test of worth more worthwhile, and I'm just so happy with how that turned out. It's just great. And then the portal scene where all the characters come back, and it's just the end game. Because the sketches got cancelled, I never thought I always had these ideas of like this grand finale, and I never thought I'd see it realised, but I'm so glad that I made this one, just as a one-off, just to get that, purely to get that final action scene, and that really powerful ending that I'm still bloody proud of. I'm so happy that I got that realised finally, and I'm just, this is probably my new favourite video, not just sketch, but new favourite video that I've made. Maybe from Cardiff with Love Beats, I don't know, but it's, I'm so proud of it, and I love it. Anyway, that's my list. Go watch the sketch if you want.